So, good day po, sir. My name is Christian Jason Nival,
And I'm Erol Samson.
and we're going to discuss about the President of the Philippines and their contribution and achievements. So, the first president is Emilio Aguinaldo. He served the Philippines in January 23rd, 1899 until March 23, 1901. Emilio Aguinaldo was the first president of the Philippines First Republic, also known as the Malolos Republic. He was inaugurated on January 23, 1899 at the Barosoang Church, Malolos, Bulacan. He led the proclamation of the Philippine independence on June 12, 1898 in his ancestral home in Kawit, Cavite. Next president is Manuel L. Quezon. He served in 1935 until 1944. Manuel L. Quezon was the second president of the Philippines and the first president of the Philippine Commonwealth established under the USA. He was inaugurated on December 30, 1941 in Corregidor Island. He is known as the father of national language or ama ng wikang pambansa. He died of tuberculosis in Saranac Lake, New York. Next president, Jose P. Laurel. He served in the Philippines on October 14, 1943 until August 17, 1945. Jose P. Laurel was the third president of the Philippines and the president of the Second Philippine Republic. His inauguration was on October 14, 1943 in the Legislative Building, now the National Museum. He served President of the Philippines during the Japanese occupation during World War II. Next. Sergio Osmeña Sr. He served in August 1, 1944 until May 28, 1946. Sergio Osmeña Sr. was the fourth President of the Philippines and the second President of the Commonwealth. He was inaugurated on August 1, 1944 in Washington, D.C. He succeeded the presidency after the death of then President Manuel L. Quezon. During his administration, the Philippines joined the International Monetary Fund. Next. Manuel A. Rojas. He served in May 28, 1946 until April 15, 1948. Manuel Rojas was the fifth president of the Philippines, the third and the last president under the Commonwealth, and the first president of the Third Republic of the Philippines. He was inaugurated on May 28, 1946 at the National Museum building. He held office for only 1 year, 10 months and 18 days. Ex-President Elpidio R. Quirino. He served in April 17, 1948 until December 30, 1950. Elpidio Quirino was the sixth President of the Philippines and the second President of the Third Republic. He succeeded presidency after incumbent President Manuel Rojas died in 1948. Quirino was 57 years old when he was inaugurated as president on April 17, 1948 at the Malacanang Palace. Next. Ramon Magsaysay Sr. He served in December 30, 1953 until March 17, 1957. Ramon Magsaysay was the seventh President of the Philippines and the third President of the Third Republic. He was the first president who sworn in the office wearing barong Tagalog during the inauguration. He died in an aircraft disaster while boarding the presidential plane. Next. Carlos P. Garcia. Served in March 18, 1957 until December 13, 1960. Carlos P. Garcia is the 8th President of the Philippines and 4th President of the Third Republic. This Bohol native was a lawyer, poet, and professor and served as a guerrilla leader during the Pacific War. Garcia served as Vice President under Ramon Magsaysay and as Secretary of Foreign Affairs for 4 years. He became president when Magsaysay died in a plane crash in 1957. Next.
The next president is Diosdado P. Macapagal. Served in December 30, 1961 until December 30, 1965. Diosdado P. Macapagal was the 9th President of the Philippines. He was a lawyer and economist born in Lubao, Pampanga. He was inaugurated on December 30, 1961 at the Carino Grandstand. His daughter Gloria Macapagal Arroyo followed his path and became president too. Next president. Ferdinand E. Marcos. Serves in December 30, 1965 until February 25, 1986. Ferdinand Marcos was the 10th President of the Philippines and the last President of the Third Republic. He was one of the most controversial leaders of the 20th century. He ruled the Philippines for 21 years and was removed from office of the People's Power Revolution. Next President. Corazon C. Aquino. Serves in February 25, 1986 to June 30, 1992. Corazon Aquino was the first woman president of the Philippines and the first woman to become president of an Asian country. She was the 11th president and a democracy icon of one of the 100 women who shaped world history and 20 most influential Asian of the 20th century. Next president. Fidel B. Ramos serves in June 30, 1992 until June 30, 1998. Fidel Ramos is the 12th President of the Philippines and the oldest living former president of the country. Fidel B. Ramos is now 92 years old and he is one of the most admired presidents because during his presidency, he restored economic growth and stability in the country. Next president. Joseph E. Estrada serves in June 30, 1998 until January 20, 2001. Joseph Estrada is the 13th President of the Philippines and the first film actor to become a president in the country. During his years in office, economic and growth was low and he faced impeachment proceedings. He became the first president in Asia to be impeached from an executive role. He was ousted from the presidency in 2001. Next president. Gloria Macapagal Arroyo serves in January 20, 2001 until June 30, 2010. Gloria Macapagal Arroyo is the 14th President of the Philippines and the second female president and the first Filipino president whose parent was a former president. She's also an economist like her father, ex-president Diosdado Macapagal. Having a master's degree and a doctorate in economics, Gloria put the Philippines economy back in shape. Next president. Benigno Aquino III serves in June 30, 2010 until June 30, 2016. Benigno Aquino III is the 15th President of the Philippines. He is the first bachelor president a son of ex-President Corazon Aquino. He is also called as Noynoy or Pinoy. Noynoy finished his economics degree from Ateneo de Manila University. He is one of the students of a former economics professor, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, the president before him. Next president. Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Serves in June 30, 2016 until now. Rodrigo Roa Duterte is the 16th president of the Philippines. He is one of the most loved presidents. He earns a massive fan base after transforming one of the dangerous cities, Davao, into one of the most world safest when he was a mayor. At age 71, he became the oldest Filipino ever elected to the presidency. Next. Summary speech of Corazon Aquino.
So, in Corazon Aquino's speech, it has three parts. So, the first part is about anti-Marcos propaganda. Next is seeking sympathy from the listeners, and the last part is asking for help from the US from the so-called damage caused by her predecessor and part pandering to the American listeners. So as to the anti-Marcos part, she talked about Marcos being a dictator, that Marcos trampled on the Philippine democracy and jailed thousands of people. As to seeking sympathy from the listeners, she related her experience that she returned to the Philippines to bury her husband, the former Senator Benigno Aquino Jr., who was assassinated at the Manila International Airport. She was trying to appeal to her American listeners that she was a grieved widow. Her husband should not have come back after being warned by Marcos, and he was supposed to return to the Philippines after he got well from his heart surgery in Texas, but instead he lingered on and stayed for 2 years. He even went outside of the Philippines to meet with anti-Marcos elements and took a fellowship in one of the American universities. He decided to come back when Marcos became seriously ill in 1983. Next.
As to seeking help from the US, she talked about the gargantuan foreign debt and that she was asking for leniency from the foreign creditors, especially the IMF World Bank. She said the loans from foreign creditors went to crooks and corrupt officials but presented no proof. The next point was the US spent a lot of pressure to preserve democracy, but she said that the Philippines is a recovering democracy coming off the nightmare of the dictatorship. She was implying that the US should support the Philippines, which was rebuilding itself as a democracy. Finally, she called the Americans to support the peoples and that the new era has done. Actually, what happens was the restoration of the pre-1972 political elite domination of the country's politics and economies. So that's all.
Thank you po.
Thank you po.